Welcome back to Hot Topics right here at Contemporary Black Voices in good old San Antonio, Texas. So, hot topic. Is Clarence Thomas a disgrace to the black race? I'll start by saying that it's a shame that Clarence Thomas took the seat of a real giant, Thurgood Marshall. It's like you have a real giant out there, and now you have a lamb, a real lamb, and that's what he is. And before we get started, I'm going to share something with you, my experience with Clarence Thomas. I was working on Capitol Hill for Senator Burke's body, and we all the staffers, we're the first black staffers to really have key positions as a result of the civil rights movement. So we got together, Peter Parham from Kennedy's staff, and some other Reggie Gooding from Glenn's staff. We said, and we even got with the Republicans. I said, look, we all have a major issue, and that's being black. So let's every month have a luncheon where we just talk black. And we did that. We got the Republicans and everything, and I think the greatest experiences with Thurgood Marshall came and talked with us.
Oh, wow.
But guess who never showed up for the luncheons?
Wow.
Take a guess.
Take a guess.
Wow.
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas.
Never showed up. So, and I think he's been a disgrace from my perspective, representing, well, you know, he represents the whole country, but everybody's going to look at him as being the black
Right.
for a long time. Just something. So, has he represented us well? I already gave you my opinion. So, Sharon, let's go to you.
You know, ever since the Anita Hill fiasco, Clarence Thomas has had a certain shadiness about himself in terms of ethics, moral being morally bound, and just doesn't care about the needs of black folks. And I really believe that because of that particular case, we as a community have been his targets ever since. And all of the stuff that's coming out right now, I wish we could have Anita Hill on this team right now, so she can say, "I told you."
I told you so.
I told you so. And then his wife Jenny, she's just kind of like the icing on the cake for all of his unethical behavior, because he didn't start out unethical. In fact, I had just checked online because I wanted to know did he ever practice law, and he was an attorney for the Monsanto company. And I think this is a company we need to really keep in mind, because there's a case coming up where the Supreme Court may wipe out all of the EPA protections that we as a nation are protected under. And because he worked for Monsanto, you already know how he's going to vote. So he is the epitome of unethical behavior, moral inturpitude, and I'm so proud of those students down in I think it was George Washington University, I think in DC, that asked, that voted, that pushed to get him off campus, because I just don't see how he can talk about justice and ethics or anything at this point.
Okay, Caleb.
So I was trying to think of the name of the Supreme Court justice who resigned in '69, the Johnson appointee, and his name slips my mind, folks. And so, but there is precedence for an impeachment of a justice. There is precedent, of course, for a justice resigning. This justice, if I remember correctly, he took he did take a retainer from a friend of his, and then as part of the deal, I think he was supposed to be receiving $20,000 a year in salary while he was on the court. And so there is precedence for this kind of for oversight and for impeachment of a justice. And so if you look at what he did and look at what Thomas did, Thomas's sugar daddy
Really, a billionaire.
his right. He overinflated the price of the price he paid for Justice Thomas's mother's house. He then spent a large sum of money fixing up that house, and then his mother was allowed to live in that house, even with this inflated value, rent free. And I think he purchased another property. There's the money that he spent on lavish trips for Thomas throughout the year. There is, I mean, just the amount of money.
Paying tuition for his.
Tuition for his grandnephew. Tuition.
$6,000 a month.
Right. It was expensive tuition at a
$6,000
private school
Yeah.
that he paid for Thomas's grandnephew. So the amount of money and corruption involved, it far surpasses the other justice. And so, and the fact that well, I think we understand why Roberts can't do anything about it.
Why?
Because he doesn't want to cede that kind of power. He's determined to maintain the separation of power and the power of the court, and so he can't allow the legislative branch to have that kind of or that amount of oversight over the courts, because it'll diminish the power of the courts. Nobody wants to be the chief justice who presided at the time they lost that kind of power. And so,
And that's interesting, because think of this. Congress passes a law having some control of the Supreme Court. So the justices challenge it.
yeah,
It goes back to the Supreme Court.
yeah,
And so you know how they're going to rule.
yeah, unconstitutional.
Yeah, unconstitutional.
Yeah, so it's just, so I mean, with Thomas, he needs to resign for the good of the court. Roberts needs to encourage him to resign for the good of the court. People are eyeing the court, and as they continue to look into Thomas, I mean, they're starting to look into some of the other justices.
Yeah.
And so we've learned about Roberts' wife.
Gorsuch.
We learned about Gorsuch. And
Kavanaugh.
So Kavanaugh. And so
Barrett.
so the amount of, and then the sad thing is, all the Republicans are saying, "Oh, you're just, you're attacking Republican justices and stuff like that." Where's the Republican justices that are crooked?
And the other thing is we can't forget that his wife helped fund buses to these, call it what it is, to the riot and the insurrection, the January 6th insurrection. And she still, she made phone calls to try to stop the vote, stop the vote.
Yeah.
So they are truly a marriage made in heaven or in hell. Depending.
Mr. Alexander, I would say to you that you bring up some valid points, but you talk about a court, when you talk about the guy who resigned under the Johnson administration, you talk about a court at a time that had legitimacy. I don't believe that this court right now has any legitimacy. We've got so many justices now that are on the Supreme Court that have gotten there, in my opinion, nefariously. When Barack Obama was the president, they didn't allow him to appoint, and then they appointed those type of people that they wanted to appoint. I would even go back to the old man Bush, who appointed Clarence Thomas, and find out if this guy, the guy that is the donor for Clarence Thomas, if he was also a donor to Bush, and if this guy spent money to have Clarence Thomas appointed to the court. That's where we really need to go with this, and to find out, and that's where we can really start digging up some stuff. The last point that I want to make is that when you talk about $6,000 a month for his grandson or whatever,
nephews.
what the hell is he doing with his money?
Well, he said there was. I read a state.
I know, but what is Clarence Thomas doing with it? He makes enough money.
I read a statement saying
he can't pay $6,000.
no. I read a statement saying that they don't pay him enough. It's like he's trying to justify what he's doing, why he's doing what he's doing.
So their salaries are set by Congress. What are they to about 400 some odd thousand?
No, I don't think they make that much.
Yes. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, I think there are up to about, I know it's over 300, but I think it's maybe 400 because it is up there.
Plus benefits.
Yeah, it is way up. Their salaries are up.
And the
there.
president don't make that much.
Well, his salary is up to what, 300 some
I think it's
odd?
400,000.
400,000?
It was
Yeah.
four. It was 4. I think it might even be up to 7 now.
Because I know
think
it's
that-
probably pushing about.
Yeah.
I think they're all around the $400,000 range.
Okay. Okay.
Let me say, this is why voting is so important,
I agree.
because the president nominates candidates to be on the Supreme Court. And if we had, let's say Dukakis had won in '88, then we wouldn't have had Clarence Thomas.
Right.
And he has been just a total disappointment, as far
Right.
as I'm concerned.
Well, you know, Clarence Thomas has demonstrated, has proved our point, many people's points, that we need, I guess, term limits, if you will, for Supreme Court justices. It's kind of that lifetime appointment. It's just killing this nation now.
How would you say if you go to term limits, do you want them to be elected or still appointed?
They can be appointed, but they shouldn't be sitting in there for life.
Yeah, he's been there since what, 1993. That's,
So maybe what, like a 10-year term limit?
No,
or
I
something?
make it shorter than that.
Even shorter than that. And so I know, so every other level of the federal judiciary has
Yeah,
signed
ethics.
ethics,
Except the Supreme Court.
Except the
the Supreme Court.
But they
need-
made a statement, but it was non-binding.
right.
Let me say this because I don't think I answered Fred's question. Is Clarence Thomas a disgrace to black people? Yes. I just wanted to go on record to say that.
I think, and probably I would imagine there's going to be some people who may hit us up, but they're the folks that follow Clarence Thomas.
Right.
Look, I got a friend that just sent me a thing about, Trump talking about the lady who brought up charges against him is a conspiracy from the Democrats. So I'm saying, like, really? Anytime black folks, Democrats, or whatever say anything negative, they want to throw up either you're talking black, you're liberal, there's always some kind of label that they want to throw on us. It's not like it just is wrong.
And what a lot of people got to realize is that the laws that or the decisions that the Supreme Court makes has long-term effects across the nation.
Yes.
We've already seen that. Who would have ever thought we would see Roe v. Wade get reversed?
Right.
Right.
You know,
Really?
I would have never thought I would have seen that. So they're taking privileges or taking something to make these reversals, make these changes. I mean, we were talking about on Facebook that they were talking about, all the things that they could reverse. And I said, he'll never reverse loving versus loving versus the U.S., about interracial marriages.
Why do you say they won't reverse that?
Because he's married to a white woman. So he's not going to reverse that and make it illegal.
When you say he, you mean Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas.
Oh, Clarence
Yeah.
Thomas.
He'll never reverse that.
No,
reverse
no,
that one.
not at all. Yeah. Well, when the hearings started, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but here's a black man who's trying to keep a black woman on the side while he goes home to his white woman. Think about that. Just think about that.
Well, he's always his history is trying to have his cake and eat it too. Right, he went through Yale via affirmative action.
He did.
And some
then
of his
came out
earliest-
against
and then he
affirmative
came out against affirmative action. He's always, it doesn't apply to him. You know what I mean? So he's always trying to have his cake and eat it too. That's it. That's Clarence Thomas.
And are we going to continue to be stuck with people like that? If you play white man's game, you get all these privileges. You get a billionaire taking you on trips all over the place at the expense of really coming out for issues and supporting issues that are best for the race.
Nation.
Are we going to continue to be stuck with these kind of people?
Always.
Fred,
Always?
You want me to jump on my soapbox of leadership again?
Quickly, because we're going to run out of
No,
time.
that's all I wanted to say is that if you say, are we going to be stuck? The question, the answer for me is yes, you're going to be stuck until you begin to get some type of leadership for us to be able to change these things.
Okay, I know our producer will get on us in a minute, but that leads to another issue. Who picks our leaders? The media.
Right.
The media picks our leaders, and the white power structure, because all they have to do is put them out there, and we fall right behind them. And you know, this is like, and here's the thing about Clarence Thomas. If he got in trouble, he would do like O.J. Simpson did, come back to the race and look for our support. And you know what? If I don't,
I don't think
we'd
so.
probably give it to him.
I don't think so.
You don't think we would?
I don't think that he would
Fred?
come back.
I think he's too far gone.
Things will only happen to us what we allow to happen.
And we always let them happen.
And we always let that happen.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. On that note, we're going to end Hot Topics because we have a special session today. A salute to our mothers because tomorrow is Mother's Day. We'll be right back with you.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
One in 3 adults has prediabetes. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
I always love my mama. She's my favorite girl. I always love my mama. She brought me in this world. I can't say it as good as Intruders. I know that. But I think we all know that song. I'll always love my mama. She brought me in this world. And so for the next 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to salute all the beautiful mothers out there who will be celebrating Mother's Day tomorrow. And not only the mothers who are still here, but the mothers who are in heaven too. So let's start with Sharon. Give us-
Okay. I have two. And one is a tribute to my mother from my friend, Bringa Chumasi. And she says, Big Mama, Mrs. Michael, is so loved. She represents the best of unconditional love as she models for us each. Her smile lights us each up with synergy, for she is the best of the best in this earth flow, in our earth flow. I am so blessed to be her adopted daughter. And again, this is from Bringa Chumasi. Then she talks, my friend talks about her adopted mom. Eloquent, graceful, kind, compassionate, humble, giving high consciousness, beautiful describes my adopted mom's flow, aka Auntie Adoa. How I love her and am so glad that she came into my life at age 11. Brenya Chumasi.
Oh, fantastic. Very good. I have one here. I'm going to read it from my phone here. It says, my mother is my biggest fan, supporter, encourager, and cheerleader. She is always encouraging and inspires me to do great things and not allow negativity to interfere and sway me. One of my fondest memories with my mother, along with many, was when I opened a bookstore and Mom jumped right in and managed the store after her retirement, while I continued working my 9-to-5 day job. My mother has helped me through many difficult challenges in my life, to include obstacles involving my children, as well as nursing my deceased husband and her now deceased sister. My mother has always been here for me and her family, and we are very fortunate to have her here. I will always love my mama. I'll always love my mama. She is my favorite girl. You only got one. You only got one. I thank God every day for my mother. Many of my friends have lost their mother, and I'm truly blessed to still have mine here. Love, Teresa. So
Wow.
that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Caleb, you have something.
So yeah, no, well, mine is to more than just my mother, and so I'll be as brief as possible. So I had the privilege of knowing my great grandmother, and so she didn't pass away till the 80s, and so I remember going down to Haynesville, Louisiana, and sitting on a porch and shelling peas. I remember picking pecans out the yard. I remember her talking to me. I remember her knowledge. I remember her wisdom. My great-grandmother in Shreveport, her knowledge, her wisdom. I thank her for sitting with me on that front porch. My grandmother who raised me, my God, my prayer for this woman used to be that I passed before she passed, because I didn't think I'd be able to take it. Oh, wow. And so she was my world, and my mother. I thank God for my mother, who was also one of my best friends in the world. And so I want to thank my village, the women who on my street who raised me. I spent the night at their house. They fed me, they educated me, they were my world. And so I thank all of those beautiful, Black, strong women, a lot of them were educators. My thanks goes out to my mother-in-law, who she taught me Christianity, the real Christianity. We used to admonish her all the time. Be careful. You're going out there under the bridge and you're feeding the homeless, or you're going to the jail and you're administering to people. And so even when my faith was shaken, and just looking at her, she showed me what Christianity was about. She stayed under the bridges feeding the homeless. She stayed in jail administering to folks. And so I want to thank her for that example. And so there's just so many people that I want to thank. And I just want to acknowledge all of the mothers out there and everything that they do, everything they've done, everything they continue to do, all the sacrifices they've made. And so I just want to say I thank you, and I love you, and all of you, I put you on a pedestal. You just don't know what you mean to me. And so that's what I have to say.
Yeah. I'll say about my mother what I remember. Well, there's a lot that I remember. But when I was 12 years old, I organized a little league baseball team. It was called the Hot Rods. The Hot Rods. We had little T-shirts, Hot Rods. None of us could play ball very well. But during the summer when we had a game, she would polish my father would leave the car there, and he would walk to the post office, leave the car for my mother all the time. So she'd polish all in the car and drive us out to White Park. And we'd get out there and play ball. And the newspapers were so impressed by what she did. They had a picture of her, and interesting because all the kids had watches, and on her arm were all these watches. So that's one of the grandest memories of many that I have of my mother. So anyone else want to add anything?
Chris?
Caleb brings up something when he talked about his grandmother, and my grandmother was very instrumental in my life. We lived in a duplex in Ohio. My family was on one side, and my grandmother lived on the other side. And my grandmother I've never seen her work a day in her life. But my grandmother didn't drive. My mother drove, And my grandmother, every 3 years, always had a new car for her only daughter, my mother. I was the fifth of 5 children. So my mother died at a very early age of breast cancer at 55 years old. And so I didn't have the type of time with my mother as others or my brothers and sisters really had. But my grandmother even died after my mother. My grandmother's house, my grandmother used to rent rooms at her house. And we always had people coming in, coming out, going in, going out. I mean, people like Little Richard, people like Kool and the Gang. You know, we lived across the street from a place that was like a black hotel. And this was a very big house. So she was always renting rooms. And sometimes when they couldn't go downtown to rent, like my niece is fathered by Ray Charles. So we have a lot of fond memories. My grandmother always, her door was always open. There was always food on her table. And I really, you know, kind of like you, my hat goes off to my grandmother. Everybody, we called her Aunt Hattie. And well, that's what the relatives called her. We called her Mamaw. So, but it was very good. The last thing that I will say is that my oldest sister was a lot of times like my mother, and especially after my mother died. Even when I was a little boy, my oldest sister was the one who really took care of me and made sure that everything went well for me, made sure I got my grades, went to school or whatever. But I was the type of kid that was a busybody. You know, I was never really at home. I was, you know, thinking about doing all different kinds of things. When the lights would come on, you know, your parents would tell you you're supposed to be at home. Well, Chris is out playing baseball or football or whatever. He don't realize till about an hour afterwards that he's supposed to be home. So I was always in trouble. Okay. I was always in trouble.
Couldn't tell that about you.
Especially not being a busybody.
Okay, finally, I want to acknowledge my mother-in-law, Miss Edna, who has gone on to glory. And I want to acknowledge her because she gave birth to my wife, who was the spark plug behind everything I do. So, in finally, let me say, Happy Mother's Day to all you beautiful, strong, fantastic mothers in the world. This is
Amen.
Contemporary Black Voices saying, telling our story, our way.